Some moments in life don't hit you like a hammer. They creep in like a whisper, soft at first, almost gentle, until they settle deep in your chest and refuse to leave. That's how I lost my wife, my trust, in a decade of my life. Not with a loud explosion, but with a quiet realization that grew into something I could no longer ignore. For 10 years, I built my world around her. I believed in us. Through every late-night conversation, every side joke, every silent glance that spoke louder than words. I thought we were solid, but in the end, none of that mattered. That night she was standing in front of the mirror, fixing her hair, humming to herself. It was a simple moment, something I'd seen 1,000 times before, but this time something felt off. Maybe it was the way she avoided my eyes when I asked about her plans for the evening. Maybe it was the slight hesitation before she answered. Or maybe it was the strange sinking feeling in my gut that had been creeping on me for weeks. I didn't push. I didn't accuse. I just stood there, watching her apply her lipstick, watching her slip into a dress I hadn't seen in years, when she used to say was too much for a simple night out with friends. And then it happened. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. A single notification. A message from a number I didn't recognize. I thought you should know she isn't where she says she'll be tonight. 10 words. That's all it took. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. My pulse quickened, but outwardly I stayed still. I glanced up at her, my wife, the woman I had loved for a decade, twirling a strand of hair around her finger, smiling at her reflection. I didn't say a word, not yet, because, deep down, I already knew this was just the beginning. I sat there, gripping my phone as if it had the power to undo everything. 10 years of marriage reduced to a single text from an unknown number. I read the words over and over as if repeating them would somehow change their meaning. Lisa was still standing in front of the mirror, adjusting the strap of her dress, completely unaware that, in my mind, the foundation of our marriage had already started to crack. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, to wipe that smile off her face and replace it with the truth. But I didn't, not yet. Instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced myself to play along. "Where are you girls going tonight?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She barely gled, answered at me. "Same place as last time, Annie's. Place first, then maybe out for a bit. Nothing crazy. A smooth answer, no hesitation, but something about it felt rehearsed. I nodded and forced a smile. "Have fun." Lisa turned to me, finally making eye contact. If she noticed anything off in my voice, she didn't show it. She leaned down, pecked my cheek, and grabbed her purse. "Don't wait up," she said with a wink before heading for the door. I didn't move. I just sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding. Then, as soon as I heard the front door close, I exhaled the breath I didn't realize I had been holding. I could feel my pulse in my ears. I opened the text again, staring at those 10 words. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to chalk it up to some cruel prank or a misunderstanding. But deep down I knew better. I knew something had been wrong for weeks. The late nights, the sudden interest in her appearance, the way she'd been guarding her phone like it held state secrets. The change had been gradual, but now, looking back, it was all so painfully obvious. And now I had proof, or at least the start of it. I took a deep breath and typed out a response. "Who is this?" A few seconds later, 3 dots appeared. Whoever it was, they were waiting. "I can't say. Just go check." A pit formed in my stomach. Check. Check what? Where my fingers hovered over the keyboard. But I hesitated. If I did this, if I got in my car and followed through, I would be open a door that couldn't be closed. If I went looking, I had to be ready for whatever I found. For a moment I thought about ignoring it. Maybe it was better not to know. Maybe ignorance really was bliss. But then I thought about the last 10 years, about the nights I stayed up waiting for her to come home, about the way I always trusted her, without question, about the man I had been before. Tonight, that man didn't exist anymore. I grabbed my keys and I walked out the door. The night air was thick, humid, wrapping around me like an e-moment. I slid into my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. My phone was still in my lap, the message staring back at me like an open wound. Just go. Check. Check where Annie's place. A bar. A hotel. 1,000 possibilities ran through my mind, each one worse than the last. I tapped out a response. Where is she? Seconds later, 3 dots appeared again. Then, Club Marlowe. You'll see. My stomach dropped. I knew that place. A dimly lit lounge on the edge of town, tucked away enough to offer privacy, but upscale enough to not seem seedy. It wasn't where Wise went for a simple night out with friends. It was the kind of place where secrets were kept behind low lighting and overpriced cocktails. I hesitated. Did I really want to do this? But then I thought about Lisa's smile before she left the casual. She had lied to my face, and suddenly there was no hesitation. I threw the car into gear and pulled out of the driveway. The drive felt like it took out. My mind raced through every scenario, every excuse she could possibly give. Maybe it really was nothing. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just some cruel joke. But deep down, I already knew. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as the neon sign for Club Marlowe came into view. The parking lot was packed, the bass from inside thumping through the pavement. I scanned the rows of cars, my heart hammering as my eyes landed on one in particular. Lisa's car. There was no doubt about it. Same den in the rear bumper, same air freshener hanging from the mirror. She was here. A burning sensation crawled up my chest. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I had 2 options. I could turn around, go home, pretend I never saw that message. I could give her the benefit of the doubt, wait for her to come home and let her lie to my face again. Or I could walk inside and face the truth. My hand was on the door handle before I even realized I had made my choice. The bouncer barely glanced at me as I stepped inside. The air was thick with perfume, alcohol, and the kind of artificial intimacy that places like this thrived on. Dim lights, low music, laughter that sounded too easy, too rehearsed. I moved through the crowd, my eyes scanning every table. Every booth couples leaned in close, hands brushing, whispers exchanged. Then I saw her, Lisa, sitting at a corner booth. But she wasn't alone. A man sat across from her, leaning in too close, his hand resting lightly on her knee. She was laughing in a way he hadn't seen in years. Her hand grazed his arm, fingers trailing down the fabric of his sleeve. She looked happy, not the kind of happy I had seen when she was with me. No, this was different. This was effortless, like she wasn't carrying the weight of 10 years on her shoulders. And that's when it hit me. She had already moved on. She wasn't struggling with guilt. She wasn't hesitating. She wasn't thinking about me at all. My hands trembled. My pulse roared in my ears. 10 years. 10 years of love, of trust, of thinking we were a team, and she had thrown it away so easily. I could have walked up to her. I could have confronted her, demanded an explanation, made a scene. But instead I just stood there, watching her laugh with a man who wasn't me. And in that moment I realized the truth. I didn't need to say anything. She had already told me everything. I stood frozen in place, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and fury. The music pulsed around me, the neon lights flickering like a bad omen. But all I could see was her, Lisa, my wife, laughing like she had no cares in the world, like the last 10 years of our life together meant nothing. The man sitting across from her leaned in his hands, still resting on her knee, fingers curling slightly. As he spoke, she tilted her head back, laughing again. And for a moment, I thought I was in some kind of nightmare. Maybe I had fallen asleep at home, and any second now I would wake up in my bed, Lisa beside me, mumbling about how she needed to get up early for work. But I wasn't asleep, and this wasn't a nightmare. It was real. I forced myself to breathe to stay calm, but my hands were shaking, my entire body thrumming with adrenaline. I had prepared myself for this, or at least I thought I had. I had spent the entire drive here imagining the worst, her flirting, her being with someone else. But seeing it was different. Seeing it made my stomach twist into knots so tight I thought I might be sick. I could feel my feet moving before my mind had fully caught up. One step, then another. I was weaving, leeing through the crowd, past couples sipping cocktails, past bartenders mixing drinks, past people who had no idea their world was intact while mine was collapsing. Then, just as I reached the edge of their table, Lisa's eyes flicked up and, for the first time in our 10 years together, I saw something I had never seen before. Panic. Her entire body stiffened, her eyes widening, as she took me in. Standing there staring at her, my hands clenched at my sights. The man across from her turned slightly, confusion flickering across his face. He had no idea who I was. He had no idea that the woman he was touching was my wife. Lisa opened her mouth, but no words came out. She swallowed hard, reaching up as if to fix her hair, as if that would somehow erase what was happening. "Who's this?" the man asked, his voice casual, like I was some stranger who had just wandered in off the street. Lisa shot him a quick look, one that begged him to stay quiet. I exhaled sharply, my pulse roaring in my ears. This was it. This was the moment where everything came crashing down, and yet, as much as I wanted to scream, as much as I wanted to demand answers, something inside me shifted. I didn't want an explanation. I didn't need to hear her lie to my face. I had already seen enough. I took one slow step back, my eyes never leaving hers. She was pleading with me now, her lips moving, forming silent words that never reached my ears. Maybe she was going to tell me it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe she was going to beg for my understanding, but none of it mattered. I nodded once more to myself, then to her, and turned on my heel. I didn't push past people. I didn't run. I just walked, my movements slow, deliberate, each step taking me further away from the woman I had spent a decade loving behind me. I heard her chair scrape against the floor, heard her calling my name. I didn't stop. I walked through the crowd, past the bouncer, into the humid night air. I had come here searching for answers, but I didn't need them anymore. I knew exactly what I had to do next. I didn't remember getting into my car. I didn't remember pulling out of the parking lot. All I knew was the cold mechanical way my body moved as I drove, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned pale. The world outside blurred into streaks of streetlights and empty roads, But I wasn't really seeing any of it. Lisa's face was burned into my mind, the way her eyes widened in panic the moment she saw me, the way she read for words that never came, the way she looked at the man sitting across from her as if begging him not to speak. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. If you had asked me yesterday, last week, last month, I would have said, I demand answers, that I call her out, humiliate her in front of him, make sure she understood exactly how much she had thrown away. But when it actually happened, when I was standing there seeing the betrayal with my own eyes, I realized something painful. I didn't need her words. The truth was right in front of me. The laughter, the hand on her knee, the way she was dressed, like she hadn't dressed for me in years. The ease with which she existed in a moment that had nothing to do with me. I thought about the last decade, about the holidays, the quiet Sunday mornings, the way we used to lay in bed talking about our future, about the kids we'd have someday, about the house we wanted to grow old in. And then I thought about tonight, the way she looked at him, the way she smiled, and the way she had stopped looking at me like that a long time ago. My hands tightened around the wheel. 10 years. 10 years. And she threw it away like it was nothing. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Maybe she was crafting some lie, some excuse, some way to make me feel like I had misunderstood what I saw. I didn't care. I grabbed my keys, took one last look at the house. I had once called home and walked out the door. This time I wasn't coming back. I drove without a destination. The night stretched on, endless and quiet. The hum of my tires on the pavement, the only sound in the empty streets. My phone sat face down on the passenger seat, lighting up every few minutes with Lisa's calls and messages. But I didn't reach for it. I already knew what they would say. At first, she would try to play dumb. Where are you? What's going on? Then she would pretend to be worried. Are you okay? You just left, and I don't know what's happening then. When I didn't respond, the panic would set in. Babe, please talk to me. I don't understand. And finally, the excuses would come. The lies. It wasn't what you think. Please let me explain. I gritted my teeth. Let her explain. I'd given her 10 years to explain. 10 years of trust. 10 years of believing in her. She didn't deserve a single second more. The city faded behind me as I kept driving, the roads turning darker, quieter. At some point, I pulled into a gas station parking lot, my hands still clenched around the wheel. I wasn't tired, but exhaustion sat heavy in my bones. I stepped out of the car, inhaling the crisp night air. The gas station was nearly empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A lone cashier stood behind the counter inside, flipping through a magazine, paying no attention to me. For the first time since I had seen Lisa at that club, I let myself feel it. The betrayal. It hit me all at once, a slow, suffocating wave that made my chest tighten. I had spent 10 years thinking we were on the same team, thinking we were building something real through the good times and the hard times. I never doubted her. I was loyal. I was faithful. And she had thrown me away like an old habit she had outgrown. I leaned against the car, staring at the ground, my breath coming in slow, measured beats. What was I supposed to do now? Go back? Pretend like everything could be fixed? No, that wasn't an option. I wasn't the kind of man who begged to be loved. I had always thought that if something like this ever happened, If the person I trusted most betrayed me, I would explode, that I would rage, scream, demand answers. But standing there, in that empty parking lot, I felt none of that. I felt nothing at all. Just quiet. A deep hollow. Quiet that stretched through my entire body. I opened my car door, grabbed my phone, and finally looked at the messages. There were at least a dozen from Lisa. A few missed calls from a number I didn't recognize, probably the man from the club trying to play hero. I ignored all of them. Instead, I tapped on a different contact, my best friend Owen. If there was one person in the world I could trust right now, it was him. I hit call. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice groggy with sleep. "Dude, do you have any idea what time I caught Lisa?" My voice was flat, hollow. There was silence on the other end. Then a slow, controlled exhale. "Where are you?" I glanced around the empty parking lot gas station outside the city. "I just left." "Good," he said without hesitation. "You're not going back, right?" "No." The word came out stronger than I expected. "Good," he repeated. There was a pause. "Come to my place. You don't need to be alone right now." I hesitated. I had spent the last 10 years being the kind of guy who handled things on his own. But right now, I felt like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't navigate alone. "Yeah," I finally said. "I'll be there soon." I hung up, tossed my phone on the passenger seat, and slid back behind the wheel. I had no idea what was waiting for me on the other side of this night, but one thing was clear. I was never going back to her. The highway stretched endlessly before me, bathed in the dim glow of streetlights. The radio was off, the only sound coming from the tires rolling over the asphalt. My hands remained firm on the wheel. My mind stuck somewhere between clarity and chaos. I had spent 10 years building my life around Lisa, and in 10 seconds, she had shattered everything. Each mile I drove took me further away from the house we shared, from the memories we built, from the man I used to be. But no matter how far I went, the weight of it all sat heavy in my chest. What had I missed? I replayed our last year together, searching for the moment when she stopped being my wife and started being a stranger. Was it when she began coming home late, claiming work had been extra demanding? Was it when she suddenly started dressing differently, wearing perfume she never wore around me? Or had she stopped loving me long before that, and I had just been too blind to see it? The thought made my grip tighten on the wheel. I wanted to believe I had done everything right, that I had been a good husband, that I had given her no reason to stray. But the harsh reality was, it didn't matter. Cheating wasn't a mistake, it was a choice, and Lisa had made that choice willingly. By the time I reached Owen's apartment complex, it was past midnight. The streets were quiet, the occasional glow of a television flickering through apartment windows. I pulled into a parking spot and killed the engine, my hands resting on the wheel for a long moment before I finally stepped out. Owen was already at the door. When I reached his building, his face set with quiet understanding. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Instead, he just stepped aside and let me in. The apartment smelled like coffee and leftover takeout, a sharp contrast to the sterile emptiness of the house I had just left behind. It felt real, lived in. I hadn't realized how much I needed that sit. Owen said, motioning toward the couch, "You look like hell." I exhaled a tired laugh, sinking into the cushions. "I feel like it." He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 beers, handing me one before he sat down for a while. We just sat there, the silence stretching between us. Then, finally, he spoke. How bad was it? I took a sip, the cold liquid burning against my throat. I walked into a club and saw her with him. She was laughing, touching him, like I wasn't even a thought in her mind. Owen let out a slow breath, shaking his head. Man, I don't even know what to say. There's nothing to say, I muttered. It is what it is. Another silence. Then you're not going back, right? No. Owen studied me for a moment as if looking for any hesitation. When he didn't find any, he nodded. Good, because you deserve better than that. I wanted to believe him, but after 10 years of marriage, it was hard to see myself as anything other than the guy who got left behind. I don't even know who I am without her. I admit it. The word's heavy. I spent so long thinking we were in this together, and now I don't know what comes next. Owen leaned back, taking a sip of his beer. Then maybe it's time to figure that out. His words lingered in the air. Figure it out. I had spent 10 years loving Lisa, building a life with her. But she wasn't my life. She never was. Maybe it was time I stopped mourning what I lost and started discovering who I was without her. The weight of everything sat heavy in my chest, pressing down like an anchor. 10 years gone in a night, and yet sitting in Owen's apartment, away from the house, away from her. I finally felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. I didn't have to wonder anymore. I didn't have to ask myself why Lisa had been distant, why she had been coming home late, why she had stopped looking at me like I was the man she loved. The truth had been right in front of me the whole time. I had just refused to see it. Owen must have noticed the shift in my expression because he leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. What are you going to do now? That was the question, wasn't it? I stared at the condensation dripping down the side of my beer bottle, thinking of a few hours ago. I thought my world had ended, that my life as I knew it was over, but maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Lisa had been my whole world for 10 years, but now I saw the truth. She had stopped being my wife. Long before I caught her, I had been holding on to a ghost of what we used to be, convincing myself that we were still the same couple who had once dreamed of forever. But forever didn't exist when only one person was still fighting for it. I let out a slow breath. First, I'm calling a lawyer. Owen nodded in approval, smart. And then, I don't know, I admitted. But I'm not going back to that house. I don't care what she says. I don't care what kind of excuses she tries to throw at me. I'm done. Saying the words out loud felt different, stronger, like I was finally closing the door on something that had been rotting for years. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the unread messages. Lisa, 12. Missed calls. Lisa, where are you? Please come home so we can talk, Lisa. This isn't what it looks like. I swear, Lisa, just answer me, please. Lisa, you're blowing this out of proportion. Lisa. Fine, if you're going to ignore me, then we're done. I hope you're happy. I stared at the last. Owen peered over my shoulder, reading the texts. Well, she really thinks she can spin this on you. Huh, let her, I said, locking my phone and tossing it onto the table. She doesn't matter anymore, and I meant it. Lisa had spent who knows how long lying to my face, sneaking around, pretending to be my wife while living a double life. But now she was nothing more than a stranger. I stood up, stretching out my stiff muscles. I should probably find a hotel for the night. You're not getting a hotel, Owen said firmly. You're staying here, no arguments. For the first time that night, I cracked a small smile. Appreciate it, man. Don't mention it. I sat back down, exhaling deeply. The night had been a whirlwind of emotions: shock, anger, betrayal, grief. But now, as I sat in the safety of my best friend's apartment, the final piece settled into place. Acceptance. Lisa and I were done. I wasn't going to fight for her. I wasn't going to beg her to love me. I wasn't going to let her lies define me. She could have her new life, her secret rendezvous, her guilt me. I was walking away for good, and this time I wasn't looking back.